What's happening around the world and what's happening here at home. A very good evening to you and welcome to Weekend Primetime News. I'm Sandro Ferdinando. Now before we get into your stories in detail, let's take a quick look at your headlines for tonight.
Intellectuals oppose proposals for new constitution. Former Defense Secretary ready for presidential elections. We are the decisive force of the government. There is a possibility that the country may be divided. A controversial statement by MP Sumandiran. Shooting in Hekittavattala claims the lives of two.
First up in local news, President Maithripala Sirisena has instructed the electoral organizers of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party to prepare for a provincial council election before a presidential election. This was informed to the electoral organizers following a meeting with the Uva and Central Province electoral organizers at the Presidential Secretariat. Now, following this meeting, MP Nishantha Muthuettigama expressed these views to the media.
We had several rounds of discussions about the future of the party. At the final round, we discussed about how to make preparations to face future elections. There is no problem in that. It is clear that it is President Maithripala Sirisena. The next election will not be a presidential election. It is the provincial council elections. And following that, at the presidential election, Maithripala Sirisena will be the president for 10 years. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party and the Podujana Peramuna will form an alliance only when Mahinda Rajapaksa and Maithripala Sirisena gets together. You cannot form alliances just because everyone else wants. They have made their decision.
Now, intellectuals point out that their advice has not been taken into consideration when drafting the constitution, which is now at the center of controversy.
There were several ministers who arrived here. They took them and said that they will return with the photocopies. None of them came back. Sri Lanka, Orumittanadu, is that a requirement? No, it is not. If this is the case, they should include the language spoken by the indigenous community. No one speaks of the Malay or the Burgher people. No one said at the election that a constitution which has no meaning, no understanding and no people's mandate will be drafted. Therefore, this becomes ad hoc. The people become uneasy. This is a disgrace to the leaders of the past. The progress of the Northern Provincial Council has not been reviewed. The whole Provincial Council has to be reviewed. Meanwhile, the Anunayaka Thera of the Askiri chapter says that what is required is an election rather than a new constitution. As the Askiri chapter, we have always been saying from the beginning that a new constitution is not necessary. The Mahasangha is against this. The current government does not seem to heed to the opinion of the Mahasangha. It is unclear as to why this is being done and according to whose wishes it is being done. There is no common consensus in Parliament. There is no need for a new constitution for an election to be held, except for dissolving the provincial councils. There should be an election for the people to take a decision, irrelevant of the problems in the constitution. It is better if the mandate of the people can be received even at a provincial council election. On the other hand, there are various political and cultural problems. The country's future is uncertain because of this. The mandate of the people should be sought. If not, the current situation is uncertain. The chief incumbent of the Rajo Pavanarama Viharaya in Gatambe also spoke against the new constitution. I do not know whether the Prime Minister has lost his mind. I do not know what he is thinking. Even he is unaware as to what he is doing. The people in the government are also unaware as to what is going on. If they receive some money, they will take that money and raise their hands for anything. All the people who go there want to live rather than make the country better. People have problems. The people do not have food to eat. There are economic problems. There are housing issues. When that is in their heads, they are further burdened with something else. The people are being deceived. Everyone is being deceived.
Still in local news, the United National Party has denied any involvement in the protests carried out by some social activist groups opposite several media institutes in Colombo on Thursday.
The Island newspaper reported today that in a special statement on Friday, the UNP said that the party is committed to promote and protect the freedom of media. The statement also says that media institutions are branding the participants of the peaceful and civilized protests as NGO members and conspirators, while lauding those who stage protests violating laws and promoting violence as patriots. The statement says that the UNP strongly condemns the conduct of the other black media, which showed their autocracy by refusing to accept the letters presented by the protesters. It further says that it should be recalled on how the UNP appeared for the freedom of media and protection of journalists when media institutions faced violence and were bombed and journalists were threatened and killed. While the United National Party claims to be appearing for media freedom, this is how its leadership spoke in Parliament on the 21st of last month.
I think MP Vijdamuni Soisa is very fortunate. Do you think he will be able to collect 100 million by suing all media institutions? What if 10 million is received from each media institution? There are 3 or 4 of them. This is what you call black media. I believe we have proposed today that a debate be held in January regarding the black media, and we must name all of them from top to bottom.
Though the UNP, by issuing statements, denies involvement in the demonstrations that took place opposite media institutions on Thursday, it is clear that the truth begs to differ. This group, who arrived at the doorsteps of media institutions to advise them on how the media should act, took to the streets when Ranil Wickremesinghe was ousted from his position, demanding that democracy be re-established. On the 28th of November last year, a group identifying themselves as the Women of Sri Lanka protested opposite the presidential secretariat during heavy showers. Another group, identifying themselves as the Shining Hearts, also protested opposite the presidential secretariat wearing face masks. Several people who were seen in the group that demonstrated near media institutions were seen at the Satyagraha campaign that was launched at the Vihara Mahadevi Park after Ranil Wickremesinghe was removed from his position. As soon as Ranil Wickremesinghe was reappointed as the Prime Minister, the Satyagraha was called off. The NGO Dollar Gang arrived at media institutions in a backdrop where various people have resorted to threaten the media using the term black media. Where was the NGO Dollar Gang when the bond scam happened, when money worth billions was robbed from the people? Were they in hiding when the perpetrators left the country? Where was the NGO Dollar Gang when commercial loans with extremely high interest rates were obtained to construct expressways at a time when the country was in the middle of economic turbulence? Where was the NGO Dollar Gang when due process were not followed when granting contracts to companies such as Taisei? Where were they when the national carrier was suffering losses over losses due to the incompetence of its management and the authorities? The country is not amazed by the humiliating actions of the Prime Minister. This looks like a situation where the people who are eating off the money of the bond scam are vomiting what they have eaten. And since they do not have a place to vomit, they have chosen to do so at the doorstep of media institutions, so that the whole world can see that they are in fact people who have eaten off the money of the bond scam. Why do I say this? I say this because it was the media institutions that reported on the bond scam. We have to tell the Prime Minister and the group that betrays the country. You cannot attack the media. We are there to protect these media institutions. It should be reiterated that these allegations are not raised against the entirety of the United National Party. A majority of the United National Party, along with its deputy leadership, has condemned the actions of the NGO Dollar Gang on several occasions. Meanwhile, the Island newspaper Saturday edition in an article says that the United National Party has recommenced its attacks on the media, and that since the restoration of the UNP government some weeks ago, these attacks have assumed a more sinister aspect. The article also reminds that in April 2018, in the wake of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe defeating the no-confidence motion brought against him, there was a raucous demonstration outside the Sirasa TV premises by jubilant UNP activists. But the silent, masked, black-clad demonstrators last Thursday portend something much more sinister than the louder and more visceral demonstration against Sirasa last April. It adds that deliberate, planned actions should cause much more concern. The people demonstrating outside media organizations are mostly employees of NGOs funded by the very foreign countries that openly backed the move to block the holding of a general election that is a reason for the entire nation to stand up and take notice. The article says the whole country saw the manner in which diplomats of Western embassies in Colombo went to Parliament to express support for the move not to have a general election, and even sat in the courtrooms to observe the proceedings. It questions now, when the people paid by countries represented by those very Western diplomats demonstrate in front of local media organizations, what are we to understand from that? President Maithripala Sirisena on several occasions said that media freedom in the country has been ensured. Speaking before the United Nations 73rd General Assembly last year, President Sirisena reiterated the above and said that media freedom has been ensured in the country in the past 3 years. In a backdrop where the president says this, shouldn't legal action be taken against the NGO dollar gang that obstructs media freedom in the country? Should these people who operate with foreign funds and money that was taken out from the bond scam be allowed to act in a manner that they please? For your attention.
The current government and the Tamil National Alliance has made a number of statements in the past playing down the allegations that there is an agreement between the two parties. However, more recently, representatives of the TNA are making public statements suggesting that there is in fact an agreement between the TNA and the UNP.
Tamil National Alliance MP M.A. Sumantiran said that extensive discussions were held between the UNP and the TNA when a motion of no confidence was presented against the Prime Minister. Sumantiran points out that the presentations of the proposed draft of the new constitution in Parliament and the assigning of the Ministry of Northern Development under the Prime Minister was a result of these discussions. We are criticized for supporting the Prime Minister when the motion of no confidence was presented against him, but we discussed many matters at that time. The draft that was presented in Parliament was a result of those discussions. We said that prominence should be given to developing our areas. The reason the Prime Minister was given the Ministry of Northern and Eastern Development is for the TNA ministers to work with him and develop these areas fast. We have come to certain agreements. Meanwhile, leader of the ITAC, Mave Senadiraja, said yesterday that a mechanism has been created for cabinet decisions to be taken after holding discussions with the TNA. It has been decided to implement a mechanism where the cabinet can take decisions after holding discussions with the TNA. This mechanism is already in place. The government must work after holding discussions with us. A team has also been appointed for this. Meanwhile, speaking at another event held in Jaffna last evening, parliamentarian M.A. Sumantiran made a controversial statement suggesting that there is a possibility that the country may be divided. The hearts of the Sinhala people should be won over. There was a question as to if there would be an opportunity for that. There is a suspicion. We will not go to take over what is theirs. We only ask you not to hold on to what belongs to us. That is all. They fear that the country might be divided. I don't know the reason for that. It could be divided. Many people said that such a report would not be presented, but we have now presented it. Today, we have become the decisive force in the government.
I don't think that they will be able to bring these forward. We are not in any way ready to raise our hands the way Sumantiran says. We will definitely defeat this with our vote. Not only we will defeat it, we will not allow it to be presented.
If there are loopholes in it, we must change it, although we are in the government. If this becomes a mechanism of destroying or dividing the country, I personally will not agree to it, no matter which government is in power. It includes discussions on police powers and discussions extending beyond that. Any draft can be amended. If it is not amended, an MP can decide as to if he is going to support it or not.
The government that was afraid of the elections have now started to play games by putting forward a new constitution. Wickremesinghe must be thinking that he can deceive the people of this country. We would like to remind you that Wickremesinghe lost about 30 elections because of his attempts to deceive the people. Now what has happened to the UNP? They have become prisoners of the TNA. They must please them. This is why this constitution was presented to Parliament. What does this include? The President will be elected by the current members of Parliament. The parliamentary elections are postponed indefinitely for the delimitation to be completed. All powers are transferred to the provincial councils.
If the UNP really wants to provide the Tamil people with a political solution, the UNP should have honestly said what they will be doing for the people of the North. They concealed all of this. Today, the backbench MPs of the United National Party are saying that they will not support the constitution in Parliament if they are not provided with a clarification on the word Orumittanadu. When Ranil Wickremesinghe is presenting the constitution, MPs from his party are saying that they will work against this. So if a clear majority of your own party is not going to support the constitution, what is the point in getting the support of the opposition?
The constitution must be approved by the Constitutional Assembly. It must be presented to the Parliament. It must get 2/3 support. It must be directed to the Supreme Court and approved by a referendum, and the President should also approve this. Considering all these requirements, there is no way that a new constitution can be formulated.
Against such a backdrop, a group headed by the Prime Minister recently presented a report to the Constitutional Assembly with a few hidden agendas. Who is raising their voices in support of a new constitution for the country at such a time? Even intellectuals have pointed out that the country desperately needs solutions to the issues that the people face on a daily basis and not a new constitution. While all these opinions have fallen on deaf ears, the Prime Minister is attempting to secure power through a new constitution at a time when he cannot do so through a public vote. Through the 19th Amendment, the Prime Minister made a similar attempt and shamelessly tried to remove the obstacles in place to consolidate power through the back door. Attempts to silence the media that revealed the truth to the people through a draft bill were averted when Newsfirst and a number of other parties took the matter to the apex court of the country. Who are these rulers trying to fool? We report, you decide.
A group of local government heads representing the Sri Lanka Pudujana Peramuna convened a media briefing in Colombo today.
MPs who were defeated after contesting under the SLFP ticket but got in through the national list have made a statement saying that the SLFP together with the SLPP will form a stronger and a bigger alliance. I would like to ask how the SLFP can make decisions related to the SLPP. I ask the leaders of the SLPP to go for the next election as an independent party contesting under the symbol of the Pohotua. I'm also asking members of the SLFP and other parties to refrain from talking about the SLPP.
Now, continuing in more local news, views were expressed by the General Secretary of UPFA parliamentarian Mahinda Amarveera in Baliyatta today.
The SLFPers said they are in the government along with the UNP. They asked us how we can come in when they are in the government along with the UNP. Now we have come out. We invite all of you to join the UPFA. Amidst that, people say that they are segregated and they endorse different parties. Who will reap the benefits of this division? No matter how much you shout, the UNP will benefit from this division. I know that Mahinda Rajapaksa is in a good stance. President Maithripala Sirisena is very well aware of that. The important thing is both of them coming together and reaching a decision following a discussion. The people are requesting us to hand over the power and the responsibility of this country to someone who could win and be patriotic towards the country.
The 152nd Mod Village, constructed under the Samata Savana housing construction project, was vested with the public today under the auspices of Deputy Leader of the UNP, the Minister of Housing Construction and Cultural Affairs, Sajith Premadasa.
This model village, named as Sirisarnagama, consists of 28 villages. Alongside the event, a medical clinic for patients with unidentified kidney diseases was held and eyeglasses were also distributed. Financial aid was provided to people earning a low income to construct houses. Financial aid was also granted to senior artists by the minister. I would like to very proudly tell you that we came to power on the 8th of January 2015. We don't charge a red cent from the soldiers for the properties they are given. Not only that, we have started a housing loan method for the soldiers to build their own houses. This is patriotism. This is how to truly love your country.
Meanwhile, 2 people died in a shootout in Hekitavattala today.
The police media division stated that a group that was travelling in a motor vehicle opened fire on another group that was also travelling in a motor vehicle. The deceased are aged 28 and 33 years and were residents of Jintupitiya, Kotahena. The police also stated that there was another woman in the vehicle when they opened fire, but she sustained no injuries from the incident. The police suspect that this shootout was a result of a turf war between 2 drug smuggling gangs. They suspect that the shooting was conducted by an individual named Kalaniya Gumma. The police added that the suspects who opened fire fled towards Negombo.
This morning, a hot air balloon carrying a group of foreign tourists carried out an emergency landing in the Maradanda paddy fields in the Damgaslanda, Mipitiya.
The group had set to the air from Dambulla and had travelled for almost 52 kilometers. The hot air balloon carrying a group of people of various nationalities had an emergency landing in the paddy fields after running out of gas at around 7:30 this morning. While no one had sustained any injuries following this incident, it was reported that the paddy field had been damaged. Furthermore, it was reported that as compensation, Rs 7,000 had been paid. The hot air balloon was later removed from the paddy field with the assistance of the area residents.
Former cricket captain Arjuna Rantunga expressed these views on the current situation of Sri Lanka cricket.
Everything will not change just because the minister was changed. Today we are seeing the results of the destruction done during the past 4 years. We have been accused of match fixing. I think the ICC has decided to form a separate anti-corruption unit in Sri Lanka. It is shameful. There is very few time left for the World Cup. I don't think it will be an easy task with the prevailing situation. But our players are talented. Our administration has many issues. We are hoping to go for an election and reveal who is earning through various businessmen. You saw millions of dollars had leaked abroad, which were meant to be for cricket in our country. We request the sports minister to launch an inquiry into this. Do not sweep these under the carpet. Take these matters into consideration and earn back the money our country lost.
Meanwhile, in news from the Interclub Rugby Arena, Kandy Sports Club's 5-year unbeaten run at home and the 33-match record unbeaten streak came to an end last evening.
Army Sports Club proved to be the dark horses as they created the biggest upset in the Interclub Rugby League when they defeated the unbeaten and defending champions Kandy Sports Club by a narrow 23 points to 22 last evening. Previously in the first round, they created the biggest upset by defeating title favourites CHNFC. Army led 15-12 at half-time. The match ended in controversy as the Nethavala crowds ran into the field as Kandy scored a last-minute try, but it was disallowed after a long chat between the referees and the match officials. Accordingly, Kandy's unbeaten run came to an end at their own backyard in the hill capital.
And with that, wrap up primetime news for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, if you do want to check out more news stories, do join to www.newsfirst.lk and catch a glimpse of all the stories which are up to date. Thank you very much for joining. Take care and good night.